I'm Bree the plant lady.
Hello, hello everybody.
Here's my mom. This is Lynn. This is her garden in Aiken, South Carolina. And today we are going to do just a small seeding right here in this garden behind us. This is a space that last April, when I was in town for the Sacred Heart Garden Festival, we put down an entire bag, 1 cubic yard bag of soil cube here. So the ground is prepped. You had a summer foodscape that was beautiful
and delicious.
And now it's time to get it redone with the cottage garden mix because it's the time. It's after Thanksgiving, before New Year's. This is the window that is appropriate for seeding in zones 7 through 9. Really, zone 6 falls into this category as well. And these are all the things that are going to bloom in the spring. Poppies, larkspur, nigella, bachelor buttons, a bunch of different greens, and of course my favorite, grains. So we're going to clean this bed up, just do a little bit of cutback, and then we are going to just go ahead and scatter some seeds.
That's right.
And really we'll be done in like under 10 minutes.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, watch our progress, everybody. So in this bed, all we're really going to do is cut down this large African basil, which you can see has been nipped by the cold. And we're not going to pull it out. We're just going to cut it back to the ground, and we'll probably rake some like soil up around it. And maybe it'll actually come through and be hardy here. Same thing goes with this salvia. We're not actually going to cut the salvia at all. You can see it's still blooming. It's such a pretty plant. So we're going to leave that, and then if it gets cold and the salvia gets nipped, Mom can always come through later on and cut that down. But there's really no reason to preemptively remove something that still looks good. All right, so you can see we've got the bed prepped. We basically raked leaves in and around some of the plants that might be tender, including that African basil that I cut back, and then the salvias, and of course the brugmansias. So just using the leaves that have already fallen here as a form of extra protection. You can see there's no mulch in this bed at all. It's just bare ground. This is of course a big application of soil cube that we did in April, and this is the ideal scenario for doing this direct seeding method of all of these cottage garden seeds, including poppies, larkspur, bachelor buttons, nigella, cilantro, all kinds of different things. You can see I've got an assortment of seed here. This is what I have left that we packaged for fall sales, and we're gonna get busy direct seeding a bunch of these things so that this border will look really beautiful in April and May.
Hello again. I was just telling Brian we were out raking leaves, Dan and I, about 2 weeks ago, and it was just spectacular, this bed. The angel trumpets were still in bloom. We had so much on the salvia and the peanuts. That's when I harvested my peanuts and that. The okra was in bloom, coming up here. We picked that to paint for Christmas holidays. And it just took our breath away that we were raking leaves and things were still growing and showing beautiful flowers in November down here in the end of October, November time frame. What a lovely place to live.
It's the opposite of the north.
It is, because my mindset is still up north. I still think I need to cut everything back, get it ready for winter. And really and truly, you can still have so many beautiful plants growing during the winter months down here.
Winter is a nicer time to garden than summer.
Oh, absolutely, Brian, absolutely. And Sissy loves helping me out here.
There's Miss Lily, their newest kitten, and she is an excellent garden cat. All right, now it's time for seeding. And Mom's been saving seeds. So we've got wheat, we've got barley, we've got poppies, and we've got the Breeze Spring Gardening Mix. And basically, what I think we should do the wheat and barley as clumps so that it reads as organized.
Okay.
And then we will overseed with the Breeze Spring Cottage Mix. And this, depending on when you bought it from me, this is my first round. This has bachelor buttons and larkspur, nigella. I can't remember the whole mix at this stage, but it's got all those spring flowering things in it, but no poppies. And that's very strategic. That's because the grains and everything in the spring mix, they can actually get incorporated into the soil. So you can sow them and then you can rake over it. You could add compost if you want. You can walk in the bed. But once you sow the poppies, you can't do anything else. The poppies are the very last thing that you sow, and they have to be right on the surface. And I say this over and over again, but the reason most people aren't successful with poppies is because you sow the seeds and then you disturb the soil. Once you've sown those poppies, that's it. That's the last thing you do in the bed, which is why I did not include poppies in the spring garden mix. Because, well, again, once you've sown those seeds, you got to walk away. And it can be really hard, right?
Yes, it is. I've made this mistake in the past many, many years, not listening to her and disturbed those poppies.
And I promise you won't get good germination rate if you disturb those seeds once you've put them down. So I know I sound like a broken record in all of these videos right now, but the more you hear it, maybe the better the habit will become. So basically we're gonna start with the grains, and I actually have a couple other varieties of grains that I didn't have packaged when you got your seed.
Okay.
So we're gonna do like 4 or 5 nice clumps of grains, and then we'll cover those up with soil. Then we are going to put down the spring cottage garden mix, basically distributing it everywhere. We can do one final rake, and then the last thing we're gonna do is scatter the poppy seeds. And then we walk away.
All right.
And then we can have a mimosa.
I'm with you 100%.
All right, so I'm gonna put it on time lapse, but we've just explained to you what the process is. And I will show you some up close views just so you can get 100% a handle and recognize, like, this is not a big bed. This is probably no more than 200 square feet. And this is a great example of a space in kind of a suburban setting. You don't have to do your entire yard. You can just devote one little section to this beautiful spring cottage gardening application. And it'll be really spectacular. You've done it before, so
Yes.
You already know.
Yes, exactly.
She's aiming for yard of the year.
Had mailbox of the month one time.
That's right. All right, so for the grains, you can distribute them like a cottage style, which is what I do in my big front border. But I think for this, because you already have muley clumps up and down your driveway, planting the grains as a solid clump, it's just gonna read more intentional, more organized.
Okay.
And so the way we do that, we're gonna focus them more towards the back. Basically, we can use grains to cover the bare stalks of your brugmansias. So with the rake,
Okay.
we're just gonna take, and we're gonna put them pretty close, right? So like adjacent. And we're gonna just rake out a little area. Doesn't have to be super deep. And that's like a foot by a foot. And we're just gonna take this barley and we're gonna scatter the entire thing just like that, so it looks like a clump.
Okay.
And now, yes, I recycled these seed packs. We're just going to
Cover it up.
cover it back up.
All right. Easy breezy.
It is almost so easy that that's actually the problem. Everybody wants to make this harder than it is. And there is no easier way to garden than with direct seeding. And I know I say this over and over again as well, but Many of these plants, including the poppies and larkspur, develop tap roots and they don't transplant well, which is why you should never start them in like a tray and then transplant them. Always just scatter the seeds directly in place where you want them to grow, and you'll have a much higher success rate. I have made this mistake before and tried transplanting, and often they wouldn't die, they just don't grow. So it defeats the total purpose of growing them. So this is well-tuned advice. I've been doing this for 20 years. I can't believe that I can now start saying I've been doing things for 2 decades. But I promise you the advice that I'm sharing with you is accurate, and it will make your life easier, and it will provide a really beautiful spring display. So now we're just gonna do the same thing that we did with the barley. We're gonna do it with wheat, rye, and triticale. And you're basically gonna have just a really cool kind of winter ornamental grass display kind of in the back of this border.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, our next step is the Breeze Spring Cottage Garden mix. And this is predominantly flowers, all of which can be covered up. That is the distinguishing factor. And I see carrots and daikon radish in addition to the larkspur, nigella, and bachelor buttons. So that was the first round that I packaged. The second round, I added cilantro, and I had run out of larkspur. So it's a little confusing. I'm not a giant seed company. Remember, this is all gathered from my garden. So,
Yes.
And the process here, because we have the grain clumps in the back, we're just gonna kind of concentrate it in the open areas. And we'll do a little more over here. Okay. And because I made 2 different mixes,
I'm lucky today.
she gets to see what both mixes end up being.
Yeah.
And this one actually I think has some wheat added to it. So I'm going to concentrate this one actually more towards this back side.
Okay. Makes good sense.
Okay. So now you can come through with a rake and just kind of, I usually do this for the larger seeds just to make sure that the larger seeds have really good contact with the soil. You can do this with your hand, just like that, but it's much easier to do it with a rake. Just lightly rake over everything. But remember, we haven't sown any poppies yet. Once we sow those poppies, you cannot do this treatment. So now is the moment that you can take advantage of smoothing your soil out once and for all. All right, so the final step has arrived, and you'll notice there's no mulch. It's bare ground. We don't need to actually add any fertilizer because this is an in-ground installation. You can add fertilizer if you want, but it's really not necessary for these winter installations. And it's time for the poppies. So hold out your hand, and you're right-handed. Is that your right hand? Yes. Okay. So have a handful here, and I'm gonna put a handful too. And what we're gonna do is the bowling method. Okay. So the reason that I'm very specific about how to do this is I want the poppies to be distributed widely enough or with enough space between that you don't have to worry about coming through and thinning anything. I have a 0 thinning policy. Frankly, all of these plants are more than capable of figuring out where they want to grow and how they're going to grow next to their neighbors. So you don't need to interrupt that process at all. But the poppies, I want you to maximize your poppy experience because they're the most magical of all the plants. So instead of like tossing them where they're all going to fall in one concentrated area. What the bowling method allows is for the seeds to be more widely distributed. So basically, you're just going to take your hand like you're about to throw a ball, and you're just going to, like that.
And I'm going to come in over here?
You can come in over there. Very good. Okay, so that bed is done.
All right, nice and easy.
But my poppy packets are so enormous that there's still a lot of poppies that need to be distributed. So we're gonna walk around, and I spotted another area along the driveway where there's already really nicely sized self-sown poppies, but there's room for us to scatter some more seed. So I think that's where we're gonna head next.
All right, sounds like an adventure.
So here is the area out by the mailbox, and we just sort of cleaned up some of the perennials. There's Tradescantia planted. She's got some dwarf crepe myrtles out here. And then this back half is densely covered with pycnanthemum, and we're not obviously doing anything to that, but we're gonna focus out here where it's full sun and it's bare ground. And actually, I shouldn't say it's bare ground. There's some mulch out here. And this is a great example for people who are wondering, well, what do I do if I have mulch? You don't have to remove the mulch at all. All we're gonna do is top dress with some soil cube. This is the veggie mix that is now available in 1 cubic yard bags in addition to these 1 cubic foot bags. And basically we're just gonna open these bags up, spread it out about 1 inch deep, and then we'll be ready to direct sow. And just to give you some examples here, we've got poppies that have self-sown, which is very exciting. So you've got poppy here and really nice big ones there. A lot coming in over on this side. Of course, you do have some non-poppies that good to go ahead and weed out at this stage. Basically, the distinguishing factor is definitely that kind of seafoam green, and it's got kind of a scallop edge, and that distinguishes it from these other plants that are definitely more in the weed category. So I'm just gonna go through real quick and pluck out the non-desirables and get this bed ready so that we can scatter out the soil cube and then deposit seeds. You can see lots of poppies here. These are all self-sown from last spring, and these are going to be magnificent. We're just going to go ahead and add some more so that she's got better ground plane coverage out here. Ground plane coverage will ultimately lead to less maintenance. When you cover the ground up with something intentional, you have less opportunity for weedy plants to get established. All right, just to give you a view, you can see the mulch is still there. We just layered that veggie mix from Soil Cube right on top. And that's gonna be the perfect place for the seeds to have good contact with the soil and to germinate really easily. Remember, this is late November through the month of December. Best time for the spring flowering plants need to be sown now in late fall. Just to be redundant, spring flowering plants like poppies, larkspur, bachelor buttons in warm climates, zones 7 through 9, really zone 6 fits into this category. They have to be sown in cool soil. They grow over the winter. They're totally hardy for the winter temperatures that we have. You don't need to cover them or do anything special. And then they will bloom in April and May as the days get longer and temperatures are warmer. And then they will die and set seed when it starts to get really hot. And that's why these plants are considered cool season annuals. And they have to be sown during the cool season, and they grow in the ground or in containers through the entire winter. And here's a perfect example of a poppy. You see the taproot, and this is why it doesn't transplant. I accidentally pulled this out, and I know that it won't grow back in because it has just this one central root Once that root is disturbed, it really does not have the ability to grow back. So this is why you have to direct seed. All right, the first thing that I want to sow in here is cilantro, also known as coriander. Give this a smell.
Ooh, yummy.
So I actually got this in the Indian food aisle at Wegmans, and I was just curious to see if it would germinate, and it does. So that's actually the cheapest place to be able to buy cilantro seed, is at the grocery store. Not all spices will germinate, but I always think that's a fun experiment.
Yes, yes.
So basically take a handful, and not only is it a delicious thing to eat, but it's a beautiful flower in the spring. It's a tiny little white flower. It'll just sort of pop up in between everything, fill in the gaps, and it looks really nice with the colorful poppies.
That's true. I've seen it at her garden, and it is beautiful.
So we are just going to literally just toss the seeds throughout all the areas that we put the soil cube.
Should I go over there for a tad more?
Yeah, you can go to that side for better distribution.
Okay.
Now, the coriander seed or the cilantro seed is significantly larger, as you can see. And that's one of the distinctions about how deep a seed can be sown. However big it is, it's usually twice the depth. It can be buried and it'll still germinate, which is one of the main distinguishing factors between large seed like this or bachelor buttons compared to poppies, which are super duper small. They're basically like dust. So you can really see the size difference in the seed, cilantro here and poppies here. And that's one of the main factors for the depth of planting and why the poppies absolutely have to be right on the surface, because they're so small and they need light to germinate. So now that we've done the cilantro seed in the bed, if we wanted to, we could rake it. However, it's not necessary. And in this bed, we're just gonna leave it be. And now we're going to do the bowling method once again for the poppy seeds. Of course, you can scatter like this, but you're definitely better to do the bowling method for best distribution.
Okay, I'll get a little more when you're back on this side for back in here.
Excellent.
I had a lot of compliments this spring on this up here. People coming by, really enjoying the poppy display.
You kind of can't beat the ease of growing this, and then how incredible these flowering combinations are in the spring. And again, it's a very inexpensive process. Just follow my directions, and I promise you, my 20 plus years of experience will work out for you as well.
Yes, I agree.
All right, that took what, like 20 minutes?
About that time, yeah.
We've got two nice sections of your driveway bed planted for the spring, and now Mom actually has to give us updates.
Yes, I'll be doing filming and send them to you.
That's right. That's actually very good. Because they're coming up to me for Christmas, so we won't be in lovely Zone 8 for the next big holiday. But I suspect all of this will germinate really within the next 15 to 20 days. That tends to be the seed cycle at this time of year. And everybody is always asking about watering, and it's really hard to give advice about watering. But in general, if your top 2 inches of soil are super dry, then it's to your advantage to go ahead and apply a little bit of water. Recognize that this is a time of year where, it's much colder at night. The days are really short. You're not going to need to water that much, but if we go through an extended period without rain, by all means, make sure that you're keeping that top, inch or 2 moist enough to make sure that the seedlings won't dry out and disappear. Prior to last year, I never had to water my winter displays, but the weather is just very unpredictable and not reliable anymore, and so you do have to just sort of pay attention. If you've sown the seeds and there's rain in your forecast, you don't need to water it in. We had rain yesterday, so we're not watering any of this in at this stage. And if it doesn't rain between now and a week from today, then you might, want to bring out a sprinkler.
Okay.
But really, at this time of year, here in the southeast, we do tend to get sort of at least a little rain, every week or two, and that tends to be enough. But again, it's going to depend on airflow and your soil preparation, and there's just way too many factors for me to be able to provide a proper formula for watering. So, stick your finger in the ground. If it's dry, go ahead and give it some water. But overall, these plants are really low maintenance. Again, because we use soil cube, we're not really needing to add any fertilizer. This compost has everything that the plants need to be able to survive through the winter. And well, I can't wait to give them updates as all of this continues to grow.
I shall do that for you.
All right, everybody. I hope you found this video to be helpful. Please give us a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to the Breathe the Plant Lady YouTube channel for more practical gardening advice. And thanks so much for watching. Happy gardening!